Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We will start our session today with a very short prayer from Rumi. And the prayer goes, it's rigged. It's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged. Everything is rigged in your favor. So there is nothing to worry about. That's part of that's opening of a poem by Rumi, which is one of my favorites. So, all those of us who have been scrambling with all the work to do and are having lots of cultural shocks with our families, please know that it's all rigged in your favor and everything is going to work out beautifully in the end. And it's going to be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life, at least my life. I'm enjoying it a lot. So, thank you for being here. I have a few topics on my list, and then we'll go as we hear something. But this is what I want to cover. I want to talk a little bit about the food and the needs, specifically the bread ovens. I want to talk about punctuality and sticking to time. I want to talk about smoking and cigarettes. And I want to talk about the pace of different families with which they are adjusting. So, and if there's something more, Chris will add to that. And I am so glad that Ali is here. So I am going to rely on him a lot because of his Afghan blood in him and the legacy, Afghan legacy. So, starting with the bread. Um, in the last 2 weeks, I have eaten so much Afghan food you can't imagine. We eat a lot. Eat out a lot in New Jersey, and I picked only Afghan restaurants to go to because I wanted to meet with more people, talk to them about where I can get stuff, and learn more about the culture. So one thing I want to tell you all about, it's very much possible that either the family that you have received or the family that you will receive will ask you for a specific kind of oven which is used in Afghanistan for making bread. I'm from Pakistan, not Afghanistan, but it's very much like Afghanistan and Pakistan are like America and Canada, in my opinion, very similar in culture. And we all make our breads in these special ovens. But I did not know any family personally in America who uses the same ovens here. So I started checking around in the last few weeks that am I the only one or others in the same are in the same shoes? And I realized that these ovens, we call them tandoors. These tandoors are very expensive to get. They're $3,000, but it's not only the money. It's also because they have an extensive setup around them. Like you have to set up proper gas and electric wiring and pipings to it, like a washer and a dryer. And then no one in America that I know from Afghanistan or Pakistan uses those ovens in their home. Mostly, what people do is what I have done for the last 27 years in America. We learn how to make our traditional bread in an American oven on a pizza pan with time. It takes some effort and some struggle, but we do get there within a few weeks. And I think it's good training for all our Afghan families as they get acclimated to new culture, that they should also get acclimated to new appliances. And I asked a lot of Afghans that I met in the last 2 weeks of my eating out experiences. They all said the same thing. They said, Sophia, it's just too challenging to make the same bread at home. We generally either buy it from market or use the American ovens. So please make sure that you remember that as your family asks for an oven, and don't go to buy a $3,000 oven, because even if you buy it, it might not work in their household. Ali, do you have anything to add to that topic?
Not at this point. I think you're right. Gradually, I think it'll be reasonable to expect that the families also will adapt and know what is accessible easily and what is difficult. Afghan bread is available in markets. Afghan bread is available in South Asian grocery stores or Mediterranean grocery stores. And my family, when we immigrated, basically we adapted to where we don't make it ourselves. We just buy it from the Mediterranean stores when we have other Afghans visiting. So my sense is that families will adapt, and that is going to be the process of assimilation. I think adapting to the new environment. I would not recommend it. It's called a Daesh. You might hear that word from the families again. A Daesh or a Daesh, which is that oven. And like Sophia said, even if somehow you got your hands on it, it may not work and it may not even be safe for some of the houses because most of the houses are brick or mud. Over here, I think it may not even be safe for indoor housing.
Okay, thank you. So it's called Daesh. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so the other thing which I want to briefly talk about before we go to the larger topic of their pace is the prevalence of different forms and kinds of smoking in Afghan culture. It's a lot more than US culture, and it's different from here. There is more different kinds of smoking than just regular tobacco cigarettes. And the way smoking is done in some of the Eastern cultures, it's more socially acceptable than in US. There are, for example, I'll give you an example of my childhood. Our grandmother used to live with us, and actually I used to share my bedroom with my grandmother, and she would have a regular hookah. I don't know if you all know hookah. It's a big thing with water in the bottom and water pipes coming out, and then you put tobacco in it. But it's a smoking instrument. So I used to actually, when I was after I was 10 or 11, I used to make her hookah when our servants were not available, and I remember taking a puff here or there, which was totally fine. Nobody would care. I also remember small hookah circles in our family in which people would sit in a circle and smoke hookah. Well, that's a long time ago, but that will tell you at least still the somewhat acceptance of different forms of smoking in the culture. So as you get your families, you'll see that some of the people might be very open to the ideas of and accepting to the ideas of smoking, especially for adults under 21, which is probably coming from their culture. As I said before, I have been talking to a lot of Afghans in the last 2 weeks, meeting and talking with them. And I've realized that things have, based on what they're telling me, things have changed a lot in the last decade or so. Afghan, because of very high addiction of smoking, there is a very strong awareness of getting rid of this illness from their younger generation. So the educated Afghans are making a very strong effort to get rid of it and keep their kids away from it. But still, if you're dealing with uneducated families, smoking might be very prevalent. You might be asked to buy cigarettes by younger kids or teenagers. So I think it's really important that we start educating them about how the ill effects of smoking on the health, and how in this culture it's not as acceptable as it's not acceptable at all actually. But I wanted you to be aware of where they're coming from, especially if they're not from an educated or upper middle class, that smoking might be very prevalent. And Ali, do you want to add anything to it?
For example, when I go visit my family back in northern Pakistan, your cousins would often offer you a smoke, etc. It's the stigma is increasing in Afghan communities, but don't be offended if they ask you for a smoke. Is almost a method of bonding, and the stigmas are just not there to the degree they are in U.S. societies. But that is something that they would be able to understand. And I think it will be our job as well to help educate them as they assimilate into the new society around them, that some of the stigmas that they were not aware of, there are stigmas attached to some of these things. And this will be one of the things we'll have to sort of be aware of. In the meanwhile, don't take offense or don't be surprised if an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old comes up and asks for a smoke. That's not I think it's just they're just not aware that there's a lot more stigma to it attached in the US than it is even in Europe or especially in Afghanistan. But it's something that I think they'll understand easily because even in Afghan society, the ideas about smoking are changing. So it won't be a major transition for them. I think it'll be something that we'll be able to achieve in terms of education.
So we need to start preparing, we need to start thinking about how we'll respond to them if they ask for cigarettes, because I think that's good teaching that we can do and acclimate them to our culture here quickly.
Sophia, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
When the family when one of our family members asked for cigarettes, I didn't know. I knew that it was more prevalent than the U.S., but I knew that the Arkansas law said you have to be 21 to purchase. And so what I told them was is that you are not 21, so you can't purchase, and I can get in trouble with the law if I purchase and give to someone under 21. And so that was a real easy way for me to say I can't without being offensive. I'm not so sure that will work with somebody over 21, but it at least was an easy answer for somebody under 21.
That's wonderful. That's easy for us. Yes, absolutely. I actually did not know the 21-year-old law. Okay, so I do want to talk about punctuality. Some of you know, which I just said, I barely got up. It's very hard for me to get up before 10 a.m. I've never done that. And any place I've worked, everybody knows that, Sophia doesn't take a meeting before 10 a.m. So these meetings are working fine for me because I'm on East Coast and your 9:30 is my 10:30. But next week I'll have a challenge if we have it. So we talked about time before that how Afghan standard time or Pakistan standard time is different from US standard time, which is the actual time. And I think that's a very important thing for us to start teaching them. I think we need to, we have been learning about Afghan culture a lot, but now I think we also need to learn how to acclimate them to our culture here. So I want to say two things about timing here. Number one, we have seen repeatedly issues with our family not being on time, and we are gently telling them to stick to the time that in fact we are telling them to be ready for our appointments 15 minutes before time or 20 minutes before time, and start teaching them the change in culture where we when we say 10 a.m. it actually means 10 a.m. And it doesn't mean approximately 10 a.m. or around 10 a.m. So I think it's really important that we start acclimating all our families by gently emphasizing this switch to them from being don't be easing around the time, in fact be specific. But I wanted to highlight one thing which might help them in the beginning as we talk about the pace with what we go, is that a lot of people, especially Muslims, who have the leisure of flexibility in their schedule, it might not be Dr. Ali who's a physician. We After we get up for our morning prayers, which is really early at 6 a.m., some of us stay for longer time and then we go back to sleep. And I know for sure, for myself, my imam, and many other people, we go back to sleep and we're not up before 9:30 or 10 or sometime 10:30 or 11. So early morning appointments might not work if your family is going back to sleep or waking up late. We do need to get them ready for this culture in which kids will go to school early, they will go to work early. But keep in mind that early morning rising is not very prevalent in cultures or in places where they don't have a fixed morning schedule for work. I'm not sure about these Afghans, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, you might have trouble with family keeping staying on time for an early morning appointment. So let's start working towards teaching them on that gently and slowly, which takes me to this point of pacing our trainings for them. Ali, do you want to add to the topic of punctuality or early appointments?
Not necessarily anything more to add, except that I think it was uh, jarring sometimes for my family when they moved here to realize how early the day starts. After morning prayers at 5 o'clock, I usually don't go back to sleep. That's how we've adapted. And we just have an early night. But it is something that I think we, as the receiving community, will be aware of so that we can also try and educate them. It'll be a change of pace, and they might have to adapt, especially around prayer times. The way me and my family did, we just don't go to sleep after Fajr prayers, and we just have an early night. And I think they might get into that routine, but it might be a bit difficult at the beginning. So we'll just be aware of that.
Okay, so and If you all remember, we have talked about this. You all know Afghans are very hospitable, and if you have received a family, you might have received their hospitality, or if you have visited them, you definitely have received their hospitality. And we all talked about that rule of communication multiple times, three no's before a yes. So I always mention it at least once when we meet on Saturday mornings. I really want to re-emphasize it this time, but from both the angles. So we talked about it. When you offer something to an Afghan, they might say no, no, no before they get to the yes. It's just a very embedded part of the culture, saying no before they saying yes. So it's like a game of hospitality that's played, and it's beautiful. But it also goes the other way, which means that if an Afghan offers you something, and if you say no, which I'm hoping that you will actually mean it, that's what I've seen in US culture, they will not take it as a no, and they will keep on pushing and offering or saying whatever they're saying again and again, because they are used to that no, which does not mean a no. And that might be very difficult or challenging for some of you. For example, if somebody is offering me a food that I absolutely cannot eat or doesn't want to eat, or when I say no, I mean a no. Or if I need to be somewhere for an appointment and the Afghan wants me to stay and I say no, they might think I'm just being polite, whereas actually I have an appointment to make and I have to be there and go. And if I say no, I cannot stay and go away, I might be offending them. So I think this is a very real problem that some of you might face, that you are trying to tell no to your Afghan family and they are not hearing it because they are not used to that no. So and we have started working on it, and for our next families who are coming, me and Rebecca are actually going to change the orientations a little bit. But I have started doing that with the current people who are giving orientations, to teach Afghan families that in this culture, if someone says a no, then it means a no. Don't be offensive to hear that no. They actually, that's how it goes. So we're working on the Afghan side, but I also want you to help us teach them that a no means a no. Ali, do you want to add to that? Am I making sense here?
Oh, I agree. I mean, it always is jarring when I meet my extended family at how intrusive it can feel, the hospitality sometimes. So I'm sure some of the hosts might have experienced that as well. It'll be a gradual process because it's so enmeshed as your part of identity being hospitable, and but it can feel overbearing. I think it'll be just gentle education. Um, and the way I usually get out of it is say, oh, not today, but I promise you another time. And that is provides them sometimes an easy way out. I say, okay, I can't do it today, but another time certainly. But having been here now for almost 18 years in the US, when I meet my extended family, it can feel really intrusive when they just either push food on you or tea or something, and you have a time commitment. I'm sensitive to that. I think a lot of host families might experience it, they may not have, but I think we will work on our end to try and convey the it's a social glue, like bargaining when buying something in the market. It's just a social interaction that helps you glue the social bonds a little bit. But it can feel very intrusive. I think we'll work on our end in trying to convey our side of the sort of the American culture and our time commitments and what no means, etc. on our end. But I can see it can feel quite intrusive and sometimes awkward.
Also, instead of saying no, maybe we can be more specific. Like, for example, and our Imam did that once, that if the family needs something from you, or they want you to stay and give you more time. So instead of saying no, I cannot say, you say, I have to go and lead the prayers right now, and if I don't go, I will get late. Or I need to do this and this and this, and if I don't do that, it will be offensive to others. So maybe another way to deal with the situation when the family expects you to stay and will have enjoy their hospitality, but you have to be somewhere else and they're not understanding your no, you just don't use no and give them an actual situation or where you need to be, an actual place where you need to be, and an actual commitment that you need to make.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please go ahead.
Um, Chris and I talked about this, and I suggested that he try setting an alarm on his clock and seeing if that helped any, and using that to explain that he had to be somewhere. Did you try that, Chris?
I have tried many things. Um, the I've tried the I have to pick up my children from school, which was true. That did not that one did not work so well. What has worked well enough is another time, next time, because that gives them the opportunity to save face and to feel like hospitality has been offered. Um, and I'm also sometimes going into a meeting and saying I have to leave at 1:30. I have a phone call, and then I have somebody call me at
Wow.
1:30, or I will text Sophia and say, Sophia, I need a phone call, or I'll text another staff member at the church. And you don't have to say anything. Let me just talk to you when you call. And then it seems like I'm not saying no to the family. I'm just saying yes to something else that has to happen. And so that is helping, I think, for sure. But I do think it's in some ways unfair to the families for us to not work with them to become be used to American culture, because that is what they're coming into, and so it is necessary for us to work with them to move move them towards time as 10 a.m. standard time, but to be gracious while we're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Chris, that's a very important point that, they are moving in here, so they are actually bombarded with our culture and us all the time, whereas we just go and experience them just a few times a day. So there is more responsibility on us to work with them. But I think this is really important for them to learn as well for their long-term settlement. So try different things, try to tell them another time, try to tell them an appointment that you have that you must keep, and or do what Chris does, ask us to give you a call. um, Another point tied to the same thing is because it's also in hospitality, that Afghans are very hospitable and they will share whatever they have with you. They, whatever food they have and fruit they have. Well, back in Afghanistan, it's a different thing because there's communal living and people are sharing a lot of food. Here, they're dependent on you. And sooner or later, eventually, they will need to learn how to do budgeting of their financials and their food. They're huge, big families of six, eight, and 10. And they should be thinking of them first before others. And that's going to take a long time to come, thinking of the community that they come in. Afghanistan, just like Pakistan, is a communal collectivist culture. We think of others before us. We offer them food even if we have to go hungry. And similarly, other things like there was an incident on US military base in which this child was dehydrated and fainted because the child has been playing outside whole day and the parents didn't feed him. And we're teaching them a lot on child neglect, but actually it was not neglect. They thought somebody would have fed the child because the culture they come from, when kids are playing outside, somebody feeds them. I mean, the whole village raises them all the time. And that's what happens to me back home when I go to Pakistan. I really don't have to watch or care for my kids because we have large families and somebody's caring for them all the time. So all these things are so intertwined that I wanted to highlight that um, here they will have now a nuclear family setup, which is very different from a communal setup. They will need to prioritize themselves and budget their foods and their things, and we are the ones who have the responsibility of slowly teaching it to them, that just share if you can share, and if you don't have enough for yourself, then please don't share. And I honestly don't know how you all will do that. We can ask Ali maybe how he'll do that. I had a very difficult time when I came to US 27 years ago. My husband was a student, we had no income, but we really wanted people to come to our house and share food with us. So we did whatever we could do to make and meets to be able to host people, irrespective of the fact that we couldn't afford it. But anyways, I think one of the things that we need to do with them very soon is start slowly teaching them that they will have to learn how to take care of themselves before others, because all these people can go back home and they have a lot to eat, but you are relying on others to do groceries for you. So are there any comments or feedback on that, Ali or Chris?
I am going to try a new technique on Monday, and I do not know how it will go. I'm hoping to pull out about $500 cash, and to give that to my family, and then to go with them shopping with maybe a calculator, and we can calculate up how much things go and how much things are, so they can begin to get an understanding of how expensive food is in America, as opposed to Afghanistan, and then to explain to them that um, the government will give some money, and we're trying to prepare them for that. And I have no idea if it will be a disaster or not, but I am going to try.
Um, so, Ali, do you want to add, or are you?
No, I don't. Yeah, money management is important. I just wish I knew how to pass on those skills. It'll be a painful process, but like Chris is doing, we'll have to figure out what works for each family. Some family may have some economic literacy, others we might be starting from zero. Uh, but I don't have any skills, unfortunately, in this area. But I think we'll have to sort of tailor kind of our approach to each family depending on their baseline economic literacy, like Chris is doing.
Yeah, and that will become important for you all, because you'll see a family has a little leftover food, and instead of eating it themselves, they will offer it to you or send it to your home actually even. That's a big part of the culture too. Sending food to, it seems you have experienced it, Chris, sending food to people's home. It's a huge part of culture, and you will see that.
So we have somebody living next door to one of our Afghan families, and every single night they have brought food over to our American family. And so it's not just feeding, their family; it's feeding an additional family of five. Yes, it's 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 a wonderful thing at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and honestly, now I do that a lot. But with this families, when you are on limited budget and relying on somebody who'll take you to grocery and shopping, you don't want to share your limited food with others. And I feel you all will experience that with your families at one point or another. So I want to talk about pacing, and we all maybe can pool our brains together and figure something out. So all these families might be coming for very different backgrounds. And I want us to understand that a family which comes from an educated or upper class background has a lot of exposure to US culture before they come here. But a family which comes from a lower class background or an uneducated background has absolutely no exposure to US culture here. And the culture there is very different. It's very class stratified. One of the things I loved about US when came here is like I sent my kids to the school and I was like, wow, this is the same school where Bill Clinton sent his kids and where my kids are going. And I would go to the grocery store and like, this is the same grocery store where everybody goes. A cleaning lady, a teacher, a professor, a musician, a governor, a senator. So so the society is egalitarian, and some of the perks are that we all have access to same kind of amenities, which includes things and appliances and homes and foods. Whereas back home, everybody does not have access to the same kind of luxuries in life. So if your family is coming from a low income or uneducated background, which many of them probably will, then it will take them a longer time to get used to this culture, get used to the appliances that they're using. And not only actually appliances, let me take a step back. Get used to you, actually. Get used to us. I'm not talking about now you, a Muslim woman. Get used to even the mosque. Like if you come to the mosque that I found it, it's a very progressive mosque. You go in the mosque and the prayer hall has both men and women inside the prayer hall. Well, that's unheard of in Afghanistan. You won't see a prayer hall with both men and women inside the prayer hall at the same time praying together. So, what I'm trying to say here is that it's a very overwhelming experience, and everybody's coming from a very different background. So, we really need to use our own emotional intelligence and our own critical thinking to assess what kind of family we're dealing with, and then adjust and customize and our pace of training them according to who they are and where they're coming from. And that's where the interpreters can help you, that's where Ali can help you, I can help you assessing them where they're coming from. But we have to be really sensitive to their level of exposures, their level of education. And if somebody who is not exposed to US culture at all, and there are people who have worked with military, US military, in a way that they were never exposed to US culture. They could be basically a security guard in a remote area, and they had never actually seen the life and education of the Western cultures. Then we need to understand that even our presence and the way we talk can be very overwhelming for them. And then the amenities and the things and the rules and the regulations is the second thing. I'm going to ask Ali and Chris for more examples on that, but this is one thing that we need to start taking very seriously, that are we going too fast for this family and overwhelming them? Maybe in the beginning, which one thing me and Rebecca will work in the next orientations, we want to have very quiet orientations with minimum people so they don't feel overwhelmed around so many of us. Or are we going too slow for our family? Our family needs more than what we are giving them because they were really exposed. So that balance we will need to figure out. And I'm already sensing that after these initial 4 or 5 families who have come. What do you say to that, Ali and Chris?
I agree. It's going to be so individualized to each family dynamics. Just some of the ones that I've interacted with have had very different dynamics and very different starting points for different things. Some will be much more segregated in terms of their male children, female children. Some are actually much more equitable. The woman might translate or communicate as opposed to man. So it's going to be extremely variable. We'll just have to be sort of adaptable and resilient in meeting their needs, walking this journey with them. And I think we have to reach out to each other and when we face challenges. But generally speaking, I think observing them and, like Sophia said, using our own emotional quotients and emotional intelligence will help us guide us. But I think we're going to have to use each other as a resource. Um, uh, One family would love to, watch Indian movies, and their kids can actually understand Urdu if you speak with them, which is a much easier language to communicate with the rest of the larger community. And the other family may not watch Indian movies. So I think we'll just have to be resilient and use each other as a resource in this journey. But I think the main aim is going to be achieved with each family. I think I'm confident about that. But the journey will be faster or slower. Even within the family, I think economic independence, linguistic independence, uh, they will those walks will be walked at a different pace, even within each family, I think.
The only thing I think I might add on pacing is I was naive enough to think that I would set a 9 a.m. appointments to do grocery shopping and clothes shopping, and we would have everything done in 3 or 4 hours. That was a mistake. I have the grocery shopping went okay, but it was the entire everyone in the family, so that was a lot. And then we needed to go clothes shopping, and so I took 6 males clothes shopping, and I should have not done that because they didn't know any of their sizes. They had never been used to just typical fitting rooms at Old Navy. Um, and of course, then you have this individual preferences. I like this type of jean leg, not this type of jean leg. And I should have broken it up into smaller chunks. So taking the youngest children and then the oldest children, and not tried to do it just by male female, which is obviously important, but breaking it down by age would have been much easier as far as pacing, I think, for the family, as well as for myself.
I will share a few things that might work on this one, at least that we are doing with our family, and it's working great. So, a lot of you will get families which are large sizes, and it's hard to take 6, 8, or 10 people right now. Oh, just a second. So, they might have 6, 8, or 10 people, so it's hard to take them to shopping together. Due to this reason, we didn't take our whole family shopping together, but it worked out beautifully. We don't want to take them shopping together, so what we're doing is we have a female driver who is taking the woman in the family for shopping while the male stays home with the kids, and then we have a male driver who takes the male for the shopping while the woman stays home with the kids. That has helped a lot when we take just 1 or 2 people instead of the whole large group shopping, because shopping becomes a excursion and it takes forever. And for us who are days broken like 9, 12, 2, 3 p.m. appointments, we can't handle that. We don't have the luxury of open-ended time, which they do. So go separately, take male and woman separately for shopping. Don't take the kids with you. A couple of things that I would strongly emphasize for you to consider. I know a lot of you will buy them new clothes. I think it's okay to give them gently used nice clothes. That's what we are doing. We are not taking anybody for clothes shopping. You all know that we deliver, Medina is delivering traditional clothes for women to all the families. So women want to wear Afghani clothes, they have them. But actually, for our Medina family, we're doing the same for everything. We are dropping after the family comes, we assess their size, the kids' sizes. Then my team has a subcommittee for clothing, and then we gather, and we already have tons of them. We are happy to share with you. We gather gently used, nice Western clothes, including socks and gloves and jeans and hats, winter clothes and jackets, and we just drop them to the family. And our community has done a clothes drive. That's how we have them, and that's for multiple reasons. Number one, economic reasons, so you don't have a lot of financial load on you of buying new clothes. Number two, let them get used to Western clothes and gently used before you start buying new. But most importantly, which sometimes you don't realize, one of the biggest problem here in Western America, which now I love, but it was a problem, is choices, choices, choices. There are too many choices. Come on, I go to Starbucks and I'm like, oh my God, what coffee, what kind of coffee, how much sugar, one. I mean, you don't want to give people these choices because they're not used to choices. And sometimes choices can drive you crazy. They still drive me crazy. Life is simpler and easier without many choices, and our grocery stores, our shopping stores just offer too many choices, and I think that could be really overwhelming for a newly arriving Afghan family who are not used to making choices. They're just used to looking at one thing and just getting it for them, or somebody giving it to them. So
Can I ask you a question, Sophia?
yes.
When you were talking about grocery shopping, is it in the US, both males and females go grocery shopping depending on who's doesn't have kids or who's doing work. Is that true in Afghan culture? Is it primarily the women that does the grocery shopping, or does the man normally go? I'm trying to figure that out with our own family, what would be typical for them, and I feel like it's in our family, it's the male that generally goes, even when we got the whole family out. Or is there a rule of thumb?
Actually, there is not a rule of thumb. It totally depends on what kind of family you're getting. So, let's suppose if it's a very conservative family, and then it's quite possible that the husband does not want the wife to go out for shopping and he wants to go and do it himself. In my family, my parents would always go out together to do grocery shopping together. So I am used to that. But then we lived in a family which was also highly educated, and my mom was a part of all decision makings. And it is, but generally, if I would go for a rule of thumb looking at all the other people around me, if there is a rule of thumb, then that is that the woman prefers to do the grocery shopping. The women take a lot of pride in what kind of food they're serving their family, and they would like to go and do it. The reason we take our family separately is because our family has really young kids, and it takes a lot of effort to put all of them in car seats and belts. So we prefer to leave them home for their safety and then take the family. I have somebody who actually does the basic groceries for them, like fruits and vegetables, just standard groceries. And then we just take them out once a week for those things which don't make sense, which we wouldn't know or which they would want. I say it's again on the same, like, when I talked about pacing, assess your family, see their family dynamics, extremely important. A Pashto family might be very different from a Tajik family, who might be very different from a Hazara family. And even within these three communities, you might have the very educated or the upper class, or very uneducated or the middle class. So I would say assess your family, see their family dynamics, and the families who are older, who have older kids, have very different dynamics than the families who have young kids. They will be both very involved, husband and wife, over the kids. So everybody is different. We just have to see how our family works and observe them and go on from there. So that was for shopping. Try to use used clothes. Don't give them too many choices. Just give them the clothes till you start buying. Both separately. I guess that was it on my list. I just wanted to emphasize communal sharing a lot this time for you all to be aware before they come. But if there are any other challenges that any one of you are facing or would like to discuss, this is a good time. I made this list based on what I think was important to discuss after a week of experience with them.
So I have one question, Sophia.
Yes, go ahead, Deb.
Okay, so and this is probably just my comfort level here, but there have been, because I only have the 14 son really to communicate with, to interact with the rest of the family. Sometimes I have not been able to get him to understand things. And so I have needed to go into another room. Like, as an example, I was trying to explain that they did have bread in the freezer. They didn't think they haven't had any bread. And I was trying to explain that they did have bread in the freezer. So there's been several instances like this where I needed to go and show them. They didn't seem to mind that I was just, I felt like I was barging through their home. They didn't seem to mind, but I just want your take on that, because I see that happening quite often in my situation. So I'm just like, I'm trying to tell them that I need to go into the other room to show them. So for my comfort level, just tell me.
So let me understand it. Is the challenge is that the stuff is already there and they don't know that it's there and you have to show it to them?
Yes, like the frozen bread as an example. I couldn't get them to understand where that would be and even what frozen bread was. So I needed to go show them. So I tried to explain, I'm going into the kitchen to show you, and they followed me. Another time I was trying to explain I needed a book that I knew was in another room to show them. And I ended up having to say, I need to go back here to get a book, which I did, and they followed me. They didn't seem to be upset or anxious about that. They didn't seem to feel like I was intruding, but I felt like I was intruding.
I think if I
So,
can jump in here real quick, I think the concept of personal space, the concept of autonomy, and that is, it doesn't translate very well from American culture to a lot of Eastern cultures, especially Afghan culture. If you're in the house and you're a guest, you are invited everywhere, so you're in. I do
thank
not think personal space. I think Americans have really large personal bubbles. That
you. Yeah.
just doesn't translate to Afghans. When you're there, you need to go to the bedroom or the bathroom or the kitchen. You just say, "I'm gonna go there," and you go there. It's not gonna offend them one bit.
Thank you.
Autonomy, personal space, and personal bubbles. It doesn't translate very well to Afghan cultures. Those are not as
Okay.
defined boundaries as they are in America.
Thank
I,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ali, for saying that. And I was trying to understand whether it's about you going in the other room or just showing them stuff. So, Deb, I would like to say the same thing that, uh, it's a mixture of being very social, not having actually personal. I actually don't remember having personal space before I came to US. I didn't have any. I had my first bedroom. Well, that was with my husband. I never had even my own bedroom because I was always sharing with either a cousin or a brother or an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother. So I agree with Ali. The concept of personal space is actually quite non-existence in that culture. Nobody would mind if they have invited you inside the home. That's the key thing.
Okay.
Then they wouldn't mind what part of the home you are in, and you can actually show them around and say what. And again, we last time we talked about checking in on your families. It's very much connected to that. Check in on them as much as you want to, as much as you think they need, and you have time and you have the capacity to, because they wouldn't mind that. They would actually really like it, enjoy it. And you can see that from my struggle, because I couldn't understand your question. I still don't have that concept, that because if someone is in my home, why would they even ask me to go to that room? I just still don't understand it. You're welcome, if you're in the home, you're in the home.
So I would just take off and say, follow me kind of thing now. Got it. I got it. Thank you.
But that's sweet reminder. We live in such a global village now that sometimes I think that my culture is such an amalgam of U.S. Eastern and Western culture. In our first visit, when we were talking about orientation, I gave this example to everybody that back home, and I think we'll finish with that. Eye contact is considered very rude. So you will see these Afghans will not do eye contact. In fact, they would look down. And in fact, if you're standing next to an Afghan and he's talking to you, so instead of looking at you like in your eye, they will look on the floor and give you the ear. Their ear will be next to you and they'll be listening to you like that, nodding your head, because eye contact is considered very, very rude. Whereas here, not doing eye contact looks as if you're hiding or something, and eye contact means you are giving attention and respect and you're honest and you're talking to the next person. So we had this huge challenge in our family that my young kids who were being raised in Western culture and a product of US schools, they would look in my eye when I'm talking to them, especially when I'm upset with them or I was saying something to them, and it would be so offensive to me, and I would yell at them, don't look at me in my face, or don't look at me in my eyes. It's so rude. Look down. And both my kids learned not to ever look in my eyes, especially when I'm upset with them, because this is very rude for me to even imagine my son is looking in my eyes. He should look down like this. But then I changed with time after my years and years and years in US, and I still remember that incident when my son called out on me. He was in high school, I was upset at something, I was saying something to him and he was looking down or here or there, and I'm like, what are you doing? Look in my eyes, I'm talking to you. Don't you know you need to look at me? And he was like, Mom, you need to make up your mind whether you want us to look in your eyes or not. I mean, whether it's rude or not, because I Sometimes I think I end up raising such confused kids between the mix of East and West. But, anyways, I wanted to say that because slowly these people will learn how to adapt to this culture. We just need to go by that pace, and they will become a beautiful mixture of Eastern and Western culture. They will never be complete Westerns. Afghan, being Afghan is in their blood. It will stay there, but they will learn our ways in ways that will work for them. And your contribution is that you all is a part of that beautiful journey for them.
So that so I have not had that experience with my family. From day one, every one of them made eye contact with me. I thought that was curious, but every one of them, they initiated it and have made eye contact.
Interesting. That's good. So that means that that's not such a big challenge. We have that a lot in our family. We still see that in the mosque when I deal with people. I still see that with men that since I run the mosque, most of my teams are men. I still see that when I'm talking to them, a lot of men won't look at me in my eye, and I take it as a sign of respect. They would look either down or on the side and give me their ear instead of their eye. So, well, but that's good news. There is a question about from Donald. Donald saying our home is on 2 levels. Will our family likely expect to be able to come upstairs into our living area? What do you say? I would personally think that you should say. Go ahead, Donald.
Let me explain what I mean. If I hear you saying that when we get a family, they will not be offended if we go into their living space. They don't expect that privacy, but will they also expect to be able to come upstairs into our living area uninvited?
I will tell you, kids will do that for sure, absolutely. But I think it'll be a very good teaching on boundaries and setting boundaries if you tell them ahead of time when they come that what are the areas they should and could access and what are the areas they should not. It's a very good point because we did that with our family. Our family is actually living in Medina in our religious worship facility worship center, and there are areas we have sectioned off our building in areas that they can access and the areas that they cannot access. But it was very easy for them to understand it because it's a public building, public space, public property. So we told them these are the places you will go for your children's games and activities, and these are the places you will not go. I think anybody who's sharing a space with them initially need to do that set very clear boundaries and tell them that these are the areas you can come, these are the areas you should ask before coming because there might be something going on, and these are the areas which you should not access, of course in polite ways. What we did was we put signs on when we gave them the first orientation of the building. My admin told them where they cannot go, and we put clear signs there which says public spaces and which says residential spaces and communal use places in their language. I don't know if many people will have that challenge that we had of sharing a space with them, but if you are sharing, then I think you need to do what we did, a proper orientation on the shared use of the space, which is only on the shared use of the space, like where they can or cannot go. I think that would be really, really helpful for them. We actually did that at least 2, 3 times gently, places where they can or cannot go, especially children. Well, thank you for your question, Donald. If there is nothing else, we're almost at time. Are there any closing wisdoms that Ali, Deborah, Chris, you want to share?
All good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This talking about specifics in our real life experiences with the families is much more meaningful to me. This has been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to close today's teaching, today's training, today's communal time with a prayer from Saint Francis of Assisi, which you probably all know. It's my favorite. And that's what you're doing nowadays. So we thought it's a good time to remind us. And Saint Francis said, God came to my house. God came to my house and asked for charity. And I fell on my knees and said, Beloved, I cried, Beloved, what may I give to you? Just love, he said. Just love. So thank you all for giving so much love to these families. It will go a long, long way. Salam, peace, and shalom.